Since it wasn't a school night and wouldn't be again for quite some time, Oswald stayed up after Dad went to bed and watched old Japanese monster movie with Jinx curled up purring on his lap. Oswald had seen a lot of B-grade Japanese horror films, but this one, Zandrilix versus Mecha Zandrilix, was new to him. As always, Zandrilix looked like a giant dragon thing, but Mecha Zandrilix reminded him of the mechanical animals he drew when he stripped them of their fur. He laughed at the movie's special effects. The train Zandrilix destroyed was clearly a toy, and how the actors' lip movements didn't match the dubbed in English. Somehow, though, he always found himself rooting for Zandrilix, even though he was just a guy in a rubber suit. Somehow he managed to have a lot of personality. In bed, he tried to count his blessings. He didn't have Ben, but he had monster movies, and the library, and lunchtime pizza slices. It was better than nothing, but it still wasn't going to be enough to keep him going all summer.
Please.
He wished, his eyes closed tight.
Please let something interesting happen.
Oswald woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. The coffee he could do without, but the bacon smelled amazing. Breakfast meant time with his mom, often the only time he got with her until the weekend. After one necessary stop, he hurried down the hall to the kitchen.
Well, look at that. My rising sixth grader has risen.
Mom was standing over the stove in her fuzzy pink bathrobe, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, flipping. Oh, yum. Were those pancakes? She opened her arms.
Hi, Mom.
I demand a morning hug.
Oswald sighed like it annoyed him, but he went over and hugged her. It was funny. With Dad, he always said he was too old for hugs, but he never turned down Mom's open arms. Maybe it was because he didn't get to spend much time with her during the week. While he and Dad spent so much time together, they sometimes got on each other's nerves. He knew Mom missed him and felt bad for having to work such long hours, but he also knew, since Dad's job at Snack Space was just part-time, Mom's long hours were most of the reason the bills were getting paid. Mom always said that adult life was a fight between time and money. The more money you earned to spend on bills and necessities, the less time you got to spend with your family. It was a difficult balance. Oswald sat down at the kitchen table and thanked his mom when she poured his orange juice.
First day of summer break, huh?
Mom went back to the stove and scooped up a pancake with her spatula.
Uh-huh.
He probably should have tried to sound more enthusiastic, but he couldn't muster the energy. She slid the pancake onto his plate and then served him 2 strips of bacon.
Not the same without Ben, huh?
He shook his head. He wasn't going to cry. Mom ruffled his hair.
I know. It's a bummer. But hey, maybe a new friend will move to town.
Oswald looked at her hopeful face.
Why would anybody move here?
Okay, I see your point.
Mom said, piling on another pancake.
But you never know. Or maybe somebody cool already lives here. Somebody you don't even know yet.
Maybe, but I doubt it.
Oswald said.
These pancakes are great, though.
Mom smiled and ruffled his hair again.
Well, I've got that going for me anyway. Do you want more bacon? If you do, you'd better grab it before your dad gets in here and vacuums it all up.
Sure.
It was Oswald's personal policy never to refuse more bacon. The library was actually kind of fun. He found the latest book in a science fiction series he liked and a manga that looked interesting. As always, he had to wait forever to use the computers because they had all been taken by people who looked like they had no place else to be. Men with scraggly beards wearing layers of ratty clothing, 2 thin women with sad eyes and bad teeth. He waited his turn politely, knowing that some of these people used the library for shelter during the day, then spent the night on the streets. Jeff's pizza was as weird as he remembered. The big empty space beyond the booths and the tables was like a dance floor where nobody danced. The walls were painted a pale yellow, but they must have used cheap paint or only one coat because the shapes of whatever had been on the walls before were still visible. It had probably been some kind of mural with people or animals, but now it was just shadows behind a thin veil of yellow paint. Oswald sometimes tried to figure out what the shapes were, but they were too blobby to make out. Then there was the stage that never got used, standing empty but seemingly waiting for something. Though a feature even weirder than the stage lay in the back right corner. It was a large rectangle pin surrounded by yellow netting, but it had been roped off with a sign that said, "Do not use." The pin itself was filled with red, blue, and green plastic balls that had probably been brightly colored once, but now were faded and fuzzy with dust. Oswald knew that the ball pits had been popular features in kiddie playlands, but largely disappeared because of concerns about hygiene. After all, who was going to disinfect all those balls? Oswald had no doubt that if a ball pit had still been popular when he was little, his mom would not have let him play in one. As a licensed practical nurse, she was always happy to point out places she found to be too germy to play in. And when Oswald would complain that she would never let him have any fun, she'd say,
You know it's not fun. Pink eye.
except for the empty stage and the ball pit, the strangest feature in Jeff's Pizza was Jeff himself. He seemed to be the only person who worked there, so he both took orders at the counter and made the pizzas. But the place was never crowded enough that this was a problem. Today, like other days, Jeff looked as if he hadn't slept in a week. His dark hair was sticking up in weird places, and he had alarming bags under his bloodshot eyes. His apron was stained with both recent and ancient tomato sauce. Ew.
What can I get you?
He asked Oswald, sounding bored.
A cheese slice and an orange soda, please.
Oswald said. Jeff stared off into the distance, as though he had to think about whether the request was a reasonable one or not. Finally, he said,
Okay, $3.50.
One thing you could say about Jeff's pizza slices, they were huge. Jeff served them on flimsy white paper plates that were soon stained with grease, and the corners of the triangles always overlapped the plate's rims. Oswald settled into a booth with his slice and soda. The first bite, the tip of the triangle, was always the best. Somehow, the proportions of all the flavors in the bite were perfect. He savored the warm, melty cheese and the tangy sauce and the pleasantly greasy crust. As he ate, he looked around at the few other customers. A pair of mechanics from the oil change place had folded up their pepperoni slices and were eating them like sandwiches. A table full of office workers clumsily attacked their slices with plastic forks and knives, so they wouldn't drip sauce on their ties and blouses, Oswald guessed. After Oswald finished his slice, he wished for one more, but he knew he didn't have the money for it. So he wiped off his greasy fingers and took out his library book. He sipped his soda and read, falling into a world where kids with secret powers went to special school to learn how to fight evil.
Kid.
A man's voice startled Oswald out of the story. He looked up to see Jeff in his sauce-stained apron. Oswald figured he had outstayed his welcome. He sat in a booth reading for 2 hours and having bought a meal that cost less than $4.
Yes, sir?
Oswald said, because politeness never hurt.
I got a couple more cheese slices that I didn't sell at lunch. You want them?
Oh,
Oswald said.
no thanks. I don't have any more money.
He wished he did, though.
On the house.
Jeff said.
I just have to throw them out anyway.
Oh, okay. Sure, thanks.
Jeff picked up Oswald's empty cup.
I'll get you some more on soda while I'm at it.
Thanks.
It was funny. Jeff's expression never changed. He looked tired and miserable even when he was being extra nice. Jeff brought 2 slices stacked on a plate and a fresh cup of soda.
Here you go, kid.
Thank you.
Oswald wondered for a moment if Jeff felt sorry for him, if Jeff might think he was terribly poor like the homeless people who hung out all day in the library, instead of just the regular, barely making the ends meet poor that he was. But then Oswald figured if there was free pizza sitting in front of you, maybe it wasn't time to worry about the reasons for it. Maybe it was time to eat. Oswald had no problem polishing off the 2 huge slices. For the past month, his appetite had been unstoppable. When Mom cooked him piles of pancakes in the morning, she said he must have a growing spurt, causing him to eat like he had a hollow leg. His phone vibrated in his pocket the second he sucked down the last of his soda. He looked at his dad's text. We'll be out front at Jeff's in 2 minutes. Perfect timing. It had been a good day. The days at the library and Jeff's Pizza started to add up. The first couple of weeks had been great, but now the library didn't have the next book in the series he was reading, and he had grown bored with his online fantasy game, which, while advertised as free, now wouldn't let him advance any further without paying money. He had gotten tired of not having anybody his age to hang out with. He hadn't gotten tired of pizza yet, but he was starting to imagine that he might in the future. Tonight was family fun night, a one-night-a-week event that varied depending on Mom's work schedule. Back when the mill was still open, family fun night meant dinner at a restaurant, pizza or Chinese or Mexican. After their meal, they'd do some fun activity together. They'd go to the movies if something kid-friendly was playing. But if not, they'd go to the bowling alley or go to the roller rink where Mom and Dad used to go on dates when they were in high school. Mom and Dad were great skaters, and Oswald was terrible. But they'd skate on either side of him, holding his hands and keeping him up. They'd usually top off their evening with a waffle cone at the ice cream place downtown. Oswald and Mom would make fun of Dad because no matter what ice cream flavors were available, he always got vanilla. Since the mill was closed down, though, Family Fun Night had turned into an at-home affair. Mom would make something for dinner that was easy but festive, like tacos from a mix or hot dogs. They'd eat and play board games or watch a movie they'd rented from Redbox. It was still fun, of course, but sometimes Oswald wished out loud for old days of seeing new movies at the theater and having waffle cones after, and Dad had to remind him that the important thing was that they all got to spend time together. Sometimes when the weather was nice, they'd have family fun night. They'd pack a picnic of cold cuts and salads, courtesy of Snack Space, and head over to the state park. They'd eat dinner at a wooden table and watch the squirrels and birds and raccoons. Afterwards, they'd go for a walk on one of the hiking trails. These outings were always a nice change, but Oswald was also aware of why these were the only family fun nights that ever got them out of the house. Picnics were free. Tonight they were staying in. Mom had made spaghetti and garlic bread. They played a game of Clue, which Mom won, as she usually did, and now they were piled up on the couch together in their pajamas with a huge bowl of popcorn between them, watching a remake of an old science fiction movie. Once the movie was over, Dad said,
"Well, that was pretty good, but not as good as the real version."
What do you mean, the real version?
Oswald said.
That was the real version.
"Not really."
Dad said.
"I mean, it was set in the same universe as the real version, but it was kind of a cheap knockoff to the one that came out when I was a kid."
Dad always had to be so opinionated. He could never just watch something and enjoy it.
So, the best movies are always the ones that you watched as a kid?
Oswald said.
"Not always, but in this case, yes."
Dad was settling in, Oswald could tell, for one of his favorite things, a good argument.
But the special effects in the original version stink.
Oswald said.
All those puppets and rubber masks.
"I'll take a puppet or model over CGI any day,"
Dad said, leaning back on the couch and propping his feet on the coffee table.
"That stuff is so slick and it's fake. It's got no warmth, no texture, and besides, you like those old Zendrelix movies, and the special effects in those are terrible."
Yeah, but I just watch those to make fun of them.
Oswald said, even though he really did think Zendrelix was pretty cool. Mom came in from the kitchen with bowls of ice cream. Not as good as Waffle Cone Place, but nothing to turn your nose up at either.
Okay, if you guys don't cut out the nerd argument, I'm going to pick out the next movie we watch. And it's going to be a romantic comedy.
Oswald and his dad shut up immediately.
That's about what I thought.
Mom said, passing around bowls of ice cream. As Oswald was lying in bed sketching his mechanical animals, his phone vibrated on his nightstand. There was only one other person than his parents who ever texted him. "Hey," Ben had typed on the screen. "Hey back," Oswald typed. "How's your summer?" "Awesome, at Myrtle Beach for vacation. It's so cool, arcades and mini golf everywhere." "Jealous," Oswald typed back, and he meant it. A beach with arcades and mini golf really did sound awesome. "Wish you were here," Ben typed. "Me too. How's your summer?" "Okay," Oswald texted. He was briefly tempted to make his summer sound cooler than it was, but he could never lie to Ben. "Been going to library a lot. Lunch at Jeff's Pizza." "That's all?" It did sound pathetic compared to his family trip to the beach. He texted, "Pretty much, yeah." "I'm sorry," Ben texted, and then, "The pizza place is creepy." They chatted a little while longer, and although Oswald was happy to hear from Ben, he was also sad that his friend was so far away and having such a good time without him.